Travis Wayne Goodsell. As last night was my Wednesday video. This is just an extra. We have rain going on today, tomorrow, and yesterday. 3 days of cleansing Utah to clean out the corruption that was exposed yesterday in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Mormons know better that even if you claim it's for Jesus, you're supposed to obey the laws of the land. And Mormons are having difficulty with this. They thought that if it's the church, then it's not a violation of the law, and therefore nothing, no crime, no blood, no foul. And that's not the case, Mormons. You have to obey the laws of the land. And yes, they need to be righteous laws. You can't follow Hitler, for example, as Mormons did, justifying that article of faith. To say, hey, well, we're just following the article of faith. Hitler, we have to follow Hitler in Germany. No, you don't. You sneak out Jews, and you don't get punished by the church for doing so. Moroni and the swastika. In Helaman. Oops. Yeah. Chapter 6. It talks about criminal organizations and how they run things. Specifically, it's talking about the Gadianton Band of Robbers, a secret combination. And it can apply to all criminal organizations. And in verse 22, and it came to pass that they, the criminal organization, did have their signs, yea, their secret signs, and their secret words, and this that they might distinguish a brother who had entered into the covenant. So it's religion as well as a criminal organization. It's religion that they use for a cover. Right here from the Book of Mormon. Right in front of Mormon's eyes. That whatsoever wickedness, crime, his brother should do, he should not be injured by his brother. This is called conspiratorial cover-up, nor by those who did belong to this band, who had taken this covenant, and thus they might murder, plunder, steal, commit whoredoms, and all manner of wickedness, see crime, contrary to the laws of their country, and also the laws of their God. Religion is a front for their criminal operation. They claim God, they claim country, but behind the scenes, they're committing crime and sin. And so the Mormon Church has laws of God to obey the laws of the country. And the church yesterday was just, oh man, the wound was open and gushed right out all over the place. And if you remember, I did a video yesterday, I think it was yesterday, or was it the day before, where I talked about the church news putting up 5 pillars of evaluating truth or evaluating information about the church. And oh my God, it's by the church historian of all people. Mormons are not supposed to lie. Remember? Laws of your God. You're not supposed to violate them. And yet, we still have Mormons who are in denial, putting thumbs down on my videos. They're having difficulty processing that the church is a criminal organization, because they've been born and raised to believe that the church does not commit crime, and therefore their crimes are not crimes. And so it's okay for them as members to go around and perpetuate the crimes and defend the church by going around attacking other people who expose the church and their crimes. But in that video I did the other day, I talked about primary source documents, and I gave 2 examples about court documents. Am I inspired or what? And so yesterday, sure enough, court documents, because you're not allowed to lie to Congress. You're not allowed to lie to the courts. You're not allowed to lie to officers of the government, regardless of the division, branch, or whatever. It's a serious felony federal crime. And so the whistleblower from Ensign Peak Advisors, former Mormon, David Nielsen, who blew the whistle to the IRS, but Munchkin was in charge, Mnuchin, however you pronounce his name, refused to do anything. That does not make the church innocent. Just because somebody covers up crime, that doesn't make what the action was not a crime. And so he testified in the James Huntsman case in Southern California. Now, if you're familiar, I too have official court documentation, even though I was denied my First Amendment right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Nonetheless, I still am on the public record in the courts. And again, I am not allowed to lie to the courts. When I make an accusation, it has to be backed up with evidence. And like I said, I was denied petitioning the government for a redress of grievances. But I was able to throw in the first wound, for which James Huntsman, using David Nielsen's testimony yesterday, was able to gush it all out. And if you're saying, well, what about Kay Burningham's case with Gaddy versus COP? No, that's unrelated. Doesn't deal with crimes of the church. This is lies of the church for her case. And so, in my case, it was here in Utah, and so with Mormon compromised federal judges, the church's defense team was able to pull the BS stunt, and it's known as BS in the legal system. They teach it, but nobody does it unless you can get a compromised judge. To claim that there is no claim upon which relief can be granted. They even pulled it in Kay Burningham's case, just so that you know. She's a professional lawyer, and they pulled the same stunt on her. Because it's Utah. Federal judges are all compromised. So yeah, they pulled it on me. I was denied my petitioning for a redress of grievances because of that. But in California, yeah, no Mormon judges. Uh-oh, what's the church gonna do? Well, they didn't pull that BS stunt. Instead, what they responded with instead was James is being a baby. He's just going through a faith crisis. And so the hearing yesterday, ooh, the baby strikes back. Boss baby. If James is a baby, he fought back. And it was the bottle drew blood. It's just, see, millionaires are different than the rest of us in that they're in that place where they have to decide, do I want to be a criminal or do I want to continue to be mediocre? Because in order to get billions, you have to get dirty. There's no way to become a billionaire legitimately. The billionaires won't let you. And so, yeah, the millionaires know all about the crime of the billionaires because they've either been approached to be criminal or they're aware of it. They have secrets that they know, and most of them give in. And so, yes, James knows, as his family is a long-standing millionaires, and his father turned the company into billionaires. And so he knows all about it. Don't you, James? But James doesn't know diddly spit about tithing. It's a protection racket, as I have to keep reminding everybody. And so, what's going on with all this? What's the history behind all this? Is this something new that the church is doing and they just got caught? Has it been going on for how long? How long has it been going on for? Ex-Mormons are wondering, I bet Joseph's involved somehow. I'm not listening to Travis, but I'm betting Joseph is involved somehow. No, he's not. Again, this is another thing that Brigham Young, after Joseph was assassinated, blamed Joseph for having done so that he could then justify it and commit it himself. Now, protection racket is a 1900s wording in the legal system. So yeah, in the 1800s, it was not known as a protection racket. And we have to go back to the beginning with Brigham Young. After Joseph Smith was assassinated, Brigham Young decided that in order to attend the new Nauvoo temple, that he purposely waited until the 1st of May, the anniversary of the Illuminati, to have it dedicated, which infuriated many Mormons. And you have to understand, Brigham Young wielded power. He did not succeed Joseph correctly. It was his power by which what I'm talking about is he formed his own secret combination within Joseph's organization. He's the Band of Gadianton the Book of Mormon warned us of, and destroyed the church. And if you're unfamiliar, we as Mormons get taught that Joseph Smith was murdered by the mob. Right? Cook, for this year, did a token video on Joseph Smith's Remembrance Day of his assassination, again accusing the mob. Well, what happened to the mob then? Did they go to court? Yeah, they did. There was a court case. Mormons were not in attendance. the two eyewitnesses were not there and did not submit their eyewitness statements. Now, does that mean it's all corrupt? No. Prosecutor could have asked for those statements, but didn't. The mobsters were acquitted, found not guilty. They didn't do it. So who did? Were the courts just lying? They hate Mormons and therefore, no, obviously somebody did. But the two witnesses whose testimonies contradict each other fled the country. Isn't that interesting? I've done the videos. Yes, it was them. John Taylor murdered Hiram, and then Willard Richards murdered Joseph. They were rewarded by Brigham Young for it. And so, Nauvoo Temple built and dedicated, and taking Mormons who paid their tithing in order to get it. And Joseph's endowment was the washing and anointings only. That was it. He even set up quorums for those who were washed. That was the high priest quorum, not group. Quorum. And then for the anointed, a quorum of anointed. Quorum. Yeah, it's foreign to you, isn't it? Those are the Christs in the church. Because one who is anointed is a Christ. Christ is the Greek word for anointed. In Hebrew, it's Messiah. So yeah, we're not Christian, because Christian means anointed ones, and none of them are anointed. They're sprinkled with water as babies in the Catholic Church. Depending on which Christian church you're a part of, they treat baptism differently. Again, they're not united anymore. The Protestant Reformation fractured the church permanently. And though the Latin Pope is still trying to unite Christianity like Constantine did, they keep failing. But they have developed a Christian coalition, though. And then evangelicals are a part of the religious freedom movement that the church joined, because they want to take away religious freedom from others so that they can have exclusive religious freedom. And so that was the first time tithing was used as a protection racket. And it wasn't called a protection racket. That hadn't been invented yet. And if you're wondering, well, was that the only crime that Brigham Young did? No. Again, polygamy. He again blamed the deceased Joseph Smith, accusing him of it, practicing it in secret, so that Brigham Young could justify it. Now, in the United States, Brigham Young is not allowed to practice polygamy. He has to practice it in secret, because it's a crime. And so, he's rounding up Mormons to flee the country. And so my third great aunt, Desdemona Fulmer, was one such victim of the extortion. women did not have rights back then. Women were property. Women were slaves to their husband. So Desdemona Fulmer, unmarried, needs to be taken care of now. Joseph gave women priesthood and priesthood office. He took care of women, gave them freedom, just like he did with blacks. It is white supremacy that takes away freedom from blacks, from women, from LGBTQIAPO+, from the poor, from anybody who's not white. The church is white supremacist since Brigham Young. Again, well, no, he couldn't blame Joseph Smith. Instead, he blamed the Book of Mormon for teaching racist doctrines. And so, yes, ex-Mormons all go, oh, Book of Mormon, burn the book. It's racist. You're taking it out of context because Brigham Young lied about it. It's code. Who turned black? Laman and Lemuel and their families. What color were they before being turned black? White. Was Laman and Lemuel good or bad? They were bad. You catching on? They are talking about how people, even if they're white, if you are not righteous, your souls become black. It is not racist teaching to talk about corruption. It had nothing to do with the skin. Because who is the Book of Mormon for? White supremacists. White supremacists are supposed to read the Book of Mormon and go, uh-oh, I need to be good. Now, in their corrupted minds, it's the fear of, oh no, I'm going to turn black if I am wicked. I remember out in New York on my mission to New York, and we came across a single mother whose son had a pigmentation disorder. He was freckled, I guess you could say. Black with white freckles because of the pigmentation disorder. And it kind of hurt because she was taking her son to her church, and it's all black church, to pray to their God to have him restored as black. The poor kid, as he is growing up believing he's a freak and that God doesn't love him. That's just horrifying. You think mothers would love their children regardless of how they appear? Not the case, I guess. Anyway, and so, yes, Brigham Young is not only involved in the crime of polygamy, he's involved in financial crimes. And they head out west. They abandon the United States of America. They flee the country. They've murdered Joseph Smith. They've extorted women. They're now sex trafficking them, because that's what it's called. And it's sex slavery. And come to the Salt Lake Valley, as we all know. As Utah does not celebrate when it became a state in the Union, it celebrates when Brigham Young said this is the right place. And the news covers it, and it's a big thing, and the police are involved to show they're authoritarian. There's no reason to have police in the parade. But for Joseph Smith and the state of Utah, no, nothing. And what is also covered up from church history is that Brigham Young, in January of 1846, before the dedication of the Nauvoo Temple, had made himself king. That's where second anointings come from. Again, creating a counter-government against the United States of America. Also a crime, pretty serious one, like the Confederates did. I wonder where they got that example from. Wonder if it's the same source that Brigham Young got it from. And yes, he blamed Joseph for being a part of it. Though Joseph didn't attend the meetings. Go figure. He was running for president. He can't have a secret government, because if it gets exposed, I guess he's not going to be president, is he? So no, he was not having a secret government. Council of 50. And so when Brigham Young came to Mexico territory here in the Salt Lake Valley, after murdering the indigenous people and setting up forts to keep them away, turned this valley and the whole western United States into the kingdom of Deseret, not the state of Deseret. See, again, the United States of America, as they migrated west, and it was time they took over the Mexico territory, and thus Brigham Young's kingdom of Deseret, they had no interest in his naming it and whatever. They came in, it's now United States territory. And so what the church tried to do was get it called the state of Deseret, because they knew they weren't going to win any war. And that's where you get the concept of the state of Deseret of Brigham Young, when technically it was the kingdom. They were not trying to make their own state in the Union. They fled the country. It was their kingdom. The kingdom of Zion, as Brigham Young was called the Mormon Moses. So what does that make Joseph then? Pharaoh? Uh-oh. Yeah, is that why they murdered him? Yeah. That's exactly why they murdered him. And so he finally relented and put in Section 85 in the Doctrine and Covenants, his Doctrine and Covenants, the year before he died, because it applied to him as he believed. Joseph Smith is verse 8. Brigham Young is verse 7. I refer you to Deuteronomy chapter 19 and verse 19 for those who are false accusers. Guess what's going on right now? The judgment. Yeah. So anyway, Brigham Young continues polygamy when makes it official and defies the United States. They gotta obey the laws of the land. Nope, not going to do it. Refuses. He's a criminal. They took away his kingdom. He was delegated to governor, and even then he couldn't behave and was dethroned from governor. And so they retaliated and kept kicking out governor after governor and judge after judge. This is our kingdom. Get out. And so when the Edmunds-Tucker Act finally came around, it's not because they hated the church. It's not because of polygamy on the whole. What was set up from Brigham Young and John Taylor and then Wilford Woodruff was the practice of recruiting with this protection racket, bringing them to Zion, and then immigrating them as United States citizens, as they are extorted with their tithing. Ooh. No, Congress determines immigration, not the church. And so the tithing yard, as it was called, was their major focus in the Edmunds-Tucker Act. So the polygamy part was also a part of it. Grover Cleveland, as president, pardoned the Mormons for polygamy, not for the other crimes. The church still remained disincorporated. It's no longer an official church. It's destroyed. Property seized. Church is corrupt. And yet, Mormons were blinded, thinking that this is the true Church of God, Brigham Young is the true successor, America hates us. Because remember, Brigham Young designed the endowment ceremony. And in his design ceremony was a Death to America covenant with the penalty. If you're familiar with penalties, before Benson changed it in 1991. So, before I went on my mission, I was threatened with the penalties. When I came home from my mission, I can whistle blow on the church. It's okay now. Helaman 6 no longer applies. Well, now, Los Angeles Temple, the Temple of Angels, 1989, May 6th, before my mission to New York, New York. And so How then did the church resurrect themselves? How did they rise from the ashes? They had to get Mormons in government office again. There was a problem. In 1900, there was the Reed-Smoot hearings. Word was getting out that the Mormons were still not doing away and stopping polygamy, that it was still being performed in temples. So Senator from Utah, Reed-Smoot, was called in to testify to Congress. You are not allowed to lie to Congress. You are not allowed to lie to the courts. You are not allowed to lie to officers of the government. And the question was, should he remain a senator as a practicing polygamist? And so the official declaration by Wilford Woodruff, it had to be reissued, and still, so yes, they were arrested for polygamy, but they were still disincorporated. The church still continued to function, but without official recognition by the United States. Like the FLDS church. Warren Jeffs is locked up, but the FLDS church continues and they still think Warren Jeffs is the living prophet of God who speaks for Jesus Christ, or Adam as Heavenly Father. Remember Brigham? And that they're just being persecuted by the United States, and that they're denying them their religious freedom. They committed SNAP fraud violations. The wives applied for SNAP benefits through the government, and then, according to the laws of their church, all income needs to go to the leaders of the church for disposition. Just like the church has the council of disposition of tithes. That was brought up in yesterday's case by the testimony of David Nielsen, made up of all the prophets and the presiding bishopric. They were implicated yesterday in criminal activity. And I'm frustrated and pissed that they called tithing a donation. It's a protection racket. And so the church got people in positions of government, and one of those positions of government is when filing for new articles of incorporation with the state. Church was still practicing the protection racket of tithing. That's how they got themselves out of debt. The windows of heaven? No, that's all a lie by the church. It never happened. They were still practicing tithing as a protection racket. And that's how they were able to rent back and then eventually get out of debt. So that they had, was it 4 million or 1 million? In 1923 when they reincorporated through a Mormon with the government. The whole thing's a fraud. You're not allowed to commit fraud on government documents. tends to nullify them. So despite the church being incorporated, it was done in bad faith. And so the incorporation doesn't really hold much legal weight. It's kind of like being under duress, signing a document. Sign over your whole estate to me or you die. Well, you can do it, but then if you get the evidence, like the gun and the confession and the video recording or audio recording or whatever, witnesses to verify that you were under duress, yeah, you get everything back and the other guy goes to prison. This is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, guys. And as I've told you, in 1923, in order to reincorporate, they can't use Brigham's religion anymore. And they're white supremacists, so they can't use Joseph's religion. You know, learning of the Jews, Passover, Jewish mysticism. So they became evangelical Christian. That's why they're buddies with the evangelicals in the religious freedom movement. And then prior to that, I've gone over with you how in 1921 they removed the doctrine from the Doctrine and Covenants. Lectures on Faith. Doctrine is gone from the Doctrine and Covenants, and it's still called the Doctrine and Covenants. This is the lies and the deception they pull on Mormons. And then in 1922, that's when the Arizona Mormon, who did her thesis paper on the secret meeting of Mormon intellectuals, who learned that the church's history of the first vision, Moroni, which was actually Nephi, giving Book of Mormon plates, and then the angelic visitors to the temple in Kirtland during Passover, never happened. So instead, what was done by the leaders of the church, Heber J. Grant was the president, was to cover up the lies of Joseph Smith of Brigham Young and turn Joseph Smith's history, which they knew was not correct, not real history, and declared it as history. And they didn't have the rock and a hat thing. They covered that part up. Because again, that's magic. They want to be evangelical. And then more changes came over the years. Spencer W. Kimball did away with the Apocrypha, refused to translate the Bible correctly, as other Christians were translating the Bible more correctly. And did a partial decoding of the Doctrine and Covenants that no longer had the Doctrine and Covenants. So do you see how they set that all up in those early 1920s? They're still a criminal organization, but they inspired the American criminal organization to design their organization exactly as Brigham Young designed it. To have the president of the Quorum of the 12 take over succession when the president dies. It's Same thing, they just call it different titles. You have the boss instead of the president. You have the underboss instead of the president of the Quorum of the 12. You have the lieutenants as the 12 apostles. You have the soldiers as the Melchizedek priesthood. And then you have associates, which are not a part of the criminal organization, but your cops, your judges, and others in the business community who are compromised to you, who will do you a favor, though. And then, of course, you have counsel. You have a counselor for the boss. Brigham Young had 2. We had actually more, but it's the same concept, counselors. Counselors don't replace the president. The underboss, the president of the Quorum of the 12, does. The exact same organization. And the American criminal organization, of which Al Capone was a lieutenant of, they got it from the church. Remember, Al Capone got caught for tax evasion. They never did take down the criminal organization in America, but they got Al Capone for tax evasion. And then he died of syphilis. I guess a lot of people died of syphilis back in those days. Gotta be clean. And so, yeah, I've exposed that using a protection racket causes all other activities to likewise be criminal. That's why it's important for everyone to understand tithing is not a donation. It is not a membership fee. It is a crime called the protection racket now. You cannot become a Mormon unless you covenant and promise, no longer with penalty, to pay a full tithe. And tithing is supposed to be 10% of your interest annually. But the church has had to change that to say, no, it's your income. They didn't make the change in Scripture, though. Not even in 1981. Perfect opportunity. Hey guys, we're taking out this section on tithing and replacing it with the New World Order tithing. Now, why would they do that? Oh, protection racket. They would be publicly exposing themselves as being involved in criminal activity with tithing. Still. And so, instead, all the times that you are doing something in the church as a Mormon, you are in bondage. Financial bondage to the church. You are being extorted. You don't get a calling in the church without being a full tithe payer. You can't get office in the church without being a full tithe payer. Children, upon being baptized, have to pay a full tithing. As once you turn 12, you can do baptisms for the dead. And you get interviewed for a release time temple recommend. I think they might have even done a permanent one, similar to the adult version. It's not permanent, but it's for the 2-year time period, so that children don't have to get constant permission from the bishop to go do baptisms for the dead. They've got their recommend now. Children. Are you familiar with child labor laws? Yeah, children. The whole system is corrupt because of tithing. When you go out on missions, You say, oh, my parents or I work to pay for this. Church isn't paying for my mission. But you're recruiting, and they have to be full tithe payers in order to become Mormon. Familiar with a pyramid scheme? Yeah. That's where recruitment, doesn't matter if you're selling something, because the company does actually force members, recruits, to purchase a kit to go out and try to sell. But recruitment involves the paying for the kit. In this case, it's a protection racket. So you've got a protection racket, you've got a pyramid scheme. This is why USANA, doTERRA, and other pyramid schemes thrive in Utah. Because our government can't take them down as a pyramid scheme, because there's a certain religious organization that runs the state that would also have to be included. See, it's not like Christianity, where people volunteer their time, spend their own money to do missions for their church. And there is no protection racket. It's donations to fund the church. Big difference. One's criminal, the other's not. And so what the whistleblower exposed yesterday is that the prophets, remember the City Creek Mall? They conspired to cover up the source of the payment for the City Creek Mall by laundering the money in Tithing, Ensign Peak Associates, through Deseret Mutual and the one other financial organization. So that it appeared, because it's been laundered, to come from Deseret Mutual, paying the bill, and that other company. Oops. Can't do that. You ever worked for a company where you get a company credit card, but you have to spend it only on company business? But you make a mistake and you spend it on something personal, and the financial clerks or auditors find that you spent something for yourself on the company credit card. Uh-oh, guess what happens to you? You get financially busted in the law, as well as fired. Yeah, that's what the church has done. You can't funnel money from one corporation to another corporation. And remember, tithing is a protection racket. They missed that. And so what you have is a conspiracy to cover up the laundering of laundered protection racket money. Even from children. I can't justify the church in this. Why are Mormons upset with me? Mormons should be terrified that they've been conned by the church, rather than attacking me with thumbs down and hate comments and the church's true testimonies. It's all lies. It's all crime. Because now you are aiding and abetting a criminal organization. By sending me death threats, you're aiding and abetting a criminal organization. This is not some joke. This is not some, well, my God's better than your God. You're evil and apostate Korahor, Travis. And we will smite you to show you we're true. No, this is a crime. And Mormons are going through the denial phase and the anger phase and the silent phase. Mormons love to go silent when the church is exposed in crime, or a Mormon is exposed in crime, like a bishop, pedophiliac, or the Mormon who used his mission field to traffic pregnant women to the States and then give their children up for adoption. If you remember that from last year. And lest we forget, lest you forget, I haven't forgotten, I keep doing videos on it, reminding you. And a temple in a major city, yet to be determined, wait for it, in Russia. Our enemy, who's still attacking us to this day. We're at war with them. We're not doing much of a fighting back, but they're at war with us. And there the church is. Hey! We're in bed with the Russians. We've made financial arrangements. Yeah, where's the temple? We gave them money. What happened to that money? What did Russia use it for? Again, Mormons, oh my God, this is serious. I know you don't like me. I know you wish I were dead. You wish I were silenced. The YouTube employee makes sure I'm silenced as best as he can. Yesterday's videos were breakout videos. In 38 minutes, my management page showed I had 5 views. YouTube, even when signed out, showed that the video only had 3. And when I clicked on it to watch it, only 2! That's what happens in a breakout when you're using analog analytical programs. The analog says, well, this is what he normally gets for views, so that when more than normal views come piling in, the analog program can't keep up. So 5 was a breakout. So yes, YouTube is doing their part to silence me under orders of the church. This is why the church paid to have me assassinated. I want to know where the source of that payment came from. Was it tithing? From children who paid to have me assassinated? I want to know. I'm denied petitioning for a redress of grievances. So, yeah, yesterday was a bombshell. And there is likely to be a criminal referral by the judge. even though they still call tithing a donation. And let's remind you with a finishing scripture for you. Joseph Smith prophesied of the corrupt church that would take it over from him, usurp it. In section 101 of the Doctrine and Covenants, Joseph Smith gives a parable. In verse 43 it begins, "And now I will show unto you a parable, that you may know my will concerning the redemption of Zion." It's the future. And we go down to verse 51. "And the enemy came by night, and broke down the hedge, and the servants of the nobleman." Who are the servants of the nobleman? Give you a hint, they're on the council of on the disposition of tithes. Arose, so they've arisen, and were affrighted, as well they should be, and fled. "I'm a-leaving on a jet plane to a non-extradition country where we have business dealings with." Yeah, the church has non-extradition country sources they can go to and flee to. And as a result, the enemy destroyed their works. That's what happened with the Edmunds-Tucker Act. Everything was confiscated. And so yes, section 45, it's code. It's not the Jews, it's not Jerusalem. What temple is made of granite stone? The Jerusalem temple was limestone, actually, which was the Manti temple. But the granite stone is the headquarters temple, the center stake of Zion temple. You guys are not reading your scriptures. Do I have to again say the words? Read your damn scriptures. Oh, I love that video. That was awesome. And yes, broke down the Mormons, the olive trees. We're the new Israelites, guys. The olive trees are the house of Israel. That's us. Ex-Mormons, like myself, who no longer attend church, we're the wise virgins, though not really virgins, who recognized the church was corrupt, and we left. The foolish virgins are the Mormons, sticking behind to the very destruction. How did Joseph know? And it's happening twice! How did he know? So, there you have it. The history of the church and tithing.